And welcome back to Newsmax Now. I'm John Bachman. North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un made a surprise visit to Beijing today. It is his first known trip outside of North Korea since taking power in 2011. And joining us now is Daily Beast columnist and one of the foremost authorities on North Korea and China, Gordon Chang. Gordon, as always, it's great to have you with us.
Well, thank you so much.
All right, let's read between the tea leaves here. And what does this tell us that Kim is making his first trip to China, his first trip out of North Korea since taking power in 2011, and specifically going to Beijing? What does this mean for the United States?
Well, for the United States, it's not good news because China has, over the course of decades, exerted a malign influence on the discussions regarding North Korea. When the Chinese have been in the room, such as for the three-party talks and the six-party talks, things have generally not gone very well for the international community. But you know, what's happening here is this is really the final nail in the coffin of those people who say, oh, you know, China doesn't control North Korea. Because when China really wants something from Pyongyang, it pulls the string. And they just pulled the string in Beijing.
So why is President Trump even going to talk to Kim? Shouldn't he be having these conversations directly and more publicly with President Xi?
We have tried working through the Chinese as an intermediary. We did that especially during the six-party talks, during the George W. Bush administration. And China used its position at the center of talks really to help the North Koreans more than help the United States. By talking to Kim directly, we do two important things. First of all, we cut the Chinese out of the process, which I think is a good thing. Also, we prevent Kim Jong-un from driving a wedge between Seoul and Washington. I think one of the two reasons that Kim actually made the offer to talk to Trump directly was to try to drive a wedge between South Korea and the United States, because he figured that Trump would turn down that offer. But Trump instinctively made the right decision, which is to agree to the talks, therefore keeping South Korea's President Moon Jae-in on our side. So that was brilliant diplomacy.
One of our callers asked us a question about Barack Obama, who recently weighed in. I wanted to play a soundbite from President Obama talking about North Korea over the weekend. Here is what he had to say.
I think North Korea is an example of a country that is so far out of the international norms and so disconnected from the rest of the world that in some ways it makes it more difficult to find ways to pressure them.
What do you think about Obama's take on this? Is he really in a position to make these kind of statements, Gordon, considering how far the nuclear program developed while President Obama was in office?
Yeah, his administration really went missing on North Korea. And, you know, his predecessor, George W. Bush, his predecessor, Bill Clinton, and his predecessor, George H.W. Bush, all made serious errors on North Korea. So he joins a long line of misfortune. But, you know, I generally think that presidents shouldn't be commenting on these issues, such as at a particularly sensitive moment like now, which is we're really in the run-up to the talks between Kim and the South Korean president and Kim and our president. This is a very good time for previous presidents to butt out.
Yeah, kind of a faux pas from President Obama there, if you know anything about presidential history. Not something you like to see a former president do when it can have those negative impacts you talked about. Now, also we're seeing today positive news in the stock markets. We're hearing that the markets are stabilizing after concerns of a trade war with China may have subsided a little bit this week. But I have another question for you. Are we kind of getting played here on this, the trade war fears easing a little bit while clearly President Xi is playing us with North Korea? He's visiting with Kim, but telling us, oh, don't worry about a trade war.
Yeah, well, I think what President Trump did on Thursday by issuing that memorandum on the Section 301 investigation, that's 301 of the Trade Act of 1974. This investigation was into China's theft of U.S. intellectual property. I think President Trump did absolutely the right thing on this. You know, largely because we have to start imposing costs on Beijing for predatory and mercantilist trade behavior, violations of all their obligations to us and to the international community. And, you know, that everyone has been worried about a trade war, but we shouldn't, because we hold most of the high cards. And the Chinese really have no way to win a trade war with the United States if they face a determined American president. The only thing that the U.S. has not had in the decades that this trade war has actually continued, and it has been for a very long time, is because U.S. presidents have not been willing to use U.S. national power to protect American businesses and workers. And I think finally we now have a glimpse of someone in the White House who actually understands that we can prevail on this.
Well, the incoming National Security Advisor John Bolton calls it shock therapy for the Chinese. Perhaps that may be what's needed to make some impact over there with the Chinese. Gordon Chang, thanks so much for being with us. You can get one of Gordon's many great books on Asia, The Coming Collapse of China, to name a few. Gordon, thanks for being with us as always.
Thank you, John.
All right, coming up, we still have much more ahead here on Newsmax Now. Of course, you can still call us, as always, 877-NEWSMAX, 877-NEWSMAX. We'll try to get some more of your calls. Plus, we have headlines from around the country and across the world when we continue right here on Newsmax Now after this.